And there is a satirical sheen, but undergirding it, of course, is the fact that this guy's a pedophile and a monster. How do you write a character? This video is the first in a series in which I will give you some of the tools and concepts I use for building characters. If you are an aspiring writer, startup founder, or anyone else who wants new ways of understanding human nature, then this video is for you. As always, you can find all the concepts I'll cover throughout this series in my character sheet, which is a part of my blank page protocol, and you can download it all for free by clicking the link in the description. Let's go. First, let's choose a character by way of an example. I am going to choose someone who is currently universally known around the world, and that is Donald J. Trump, so that we can have an example of a very juicy character to draw on as we fill out the first part of this sheet. Today, we're going to talk about two very simple ideas that are deceptively simple, perhaps, and that is a character's name and their identity. So at the top here, just to go over it really quickly, we're literally just doing the first part of this entire sheet today. We see the character's name with their age, AKAs, meaning other nicknames or names they're known by, their identity plus their values, and we'll of course go into that in a moment. And in this upper corner, you can see the word image. Let's just go over image first. Before I write a character, I like to choose an image of that character. This can be a photograph. This can be something you draw yourself. I highly recommend looking into pieces of art. If you choose something from an artist, you get a stronger impression because it can live outside of realism. And even if you're writing a realistic character, it'll give you something really meaty and vivid to work with. Let's talk a little bit about names. There are, of course, infinity ways to think about how to name a character. And it's actually not one of my strengths. But I'm just going to give you a couple of dimensions that you can think about as you're naming characters that you'll find in some of the best character names ever written. The first way to think about a name is actually the shape that it creates with your mouth. That sounds like kind of a strange thing, but stay with me. There's a famous study, I think it was first done in the 1920s, but has been reaffirmed in a bunch of other studies, called the Kiki-Bouba effect. Participants were given two words, Kiki and Boba, and asked to assign them to one of these two shapes. In other words, which of these shapes feels like a Kiki, and which of these shapes feels like a Boba? Participants, in a vast majority, assigned the word Kiki to the spiky shape and Boba to the more round shape. I'm not a psychologist and I can't get into all the science behind this, but I think it makes intuitive sense. Kiki, with its two Ks and its two Is, has a sharpness about it, and Boba is a little more round. What's interesting about the study is it's not just my subjective opinion, it's kind of our collective subjective opinion. A great character that I think exemplifies this same sort of phenomenon is someone like Jabba the Hutt. He looks like a Jabba, does he not? Another way of thinking about character names is to bake in some word that has another meaning that captures a little bit who they are. A great example of this would be Severus Snape. Severus, of course, is a name of a Roman emperor who was purportedly a tyrant and is the origin of our word severe. So Severus has an association, even if we don't know the history, with someone who is not only not on the up and up, but potentially cruel and evil. But if a name has a meaning, it doesn't necessarily just have to be about the character, him or herself. For example, I think of Ned Stark from Game of Thrones. Stark means barren and desolate, but that doesn't really apply to Ned. That's actually more of an association with a barren and desolate winter landscape. A name that does capture something about his context. I think it also has a bit of the Kiki-Bouba effect. Stark is just divorced from any meaning, a straightforward, honest word for a straightforward, honest man. You can also choose names that contrast with the character. So they set up an expectation that the character is one thing when they turn out to be something quite different. A very sophisticated example of this is the character Humbert Humbert from Nabokov's Lolita. Humbert Humbert, to me, is a thoroughly ridiculous name. It almost sounds like a name you'd see on a kid's television show or something like that. And there is a satirical sheen to that entire book. But undergirding it, of course, is the fact that this guy's a pedophile and a monster. So, things to think about. Does the sound match your character visually? Do some of the meanings of the name match who they are in character or context? And can you think about playing with contrasting who the character really is with the name you have given them? And I think Trump actually fits all three of our rules. Donald Trump. Donald sort of, to me, evokes the kind of guy he appears to be, which is kind of this round, sort of ridiculous old man. The word Trump makes me think of trump cards, and there is something to his character about always wanting to trump the competition, always wanting to one-up them. So the meaning of his name is also kind of inherent in his character. And the way that J can sometimes be added, it actually gives a certain seriousness to the name that, in my humble opinion, isn't always reflected in the man himself. For AKAs, I'm going to let you fill this in. There are about 1,001 nicknames and other labels for this particular man, which you can find all over the internet. Use your imagination and some Google to fill that in. The next part of this first section is about identity and values. This comes from this fantastic book by a man named Jay Heinrichs, and it's called Thank You for Arguing. This is a book that translates all the principles of ancient rhetoric for a modern reader. As a side note, this is a great repository for dialogue and character desire. It sounds like it's a little alien because it's about ancient rhetoric, but Heinrichs does a fantastic job of showing how we use language to persuade one another. And because so much of storytelling is one character trying to get what they want from another character via language, it's really nice to have a book that details these techniques in a forensic manner. But the concept that I want to extract from it for my character sheet has to do with Heinrich's notion of identity. He tells us the way you can test someone's identity is if you yourself say, I am A, and you start listing what you are, the first word you choose is usually the closest thing to your identity, the identity that's most important to you. So, for example, someone might say, I am a mother, a banker, and a karate enthusiast. That person probably identifies most with the word mother. That's who they really are. And the question is, so what? We all have an identity. How does that help me actually write characters? Heinrichs teaches us that identity is actually about values. Who we say we are actually has to do with all the stuff underneath it that is what we really value, what we actually believe, and what we stand for. So the mother, banker, karate enthusiast in our example, if she's really mostly a mother, you'll probably find that the things she most values in her life are, I don't know, family, community, marriage, this kind of thing. Starting off, knowing who your character thinks they are does not mean that that has to perfectly align with their later behaviors. This is a classic setup for what they call an unreliable narrator. They're talking to you about everything they think they are and they think they're doing. What they're actually doing is something perhaps totally perpendicular or opposite to that. So I actually researched this for Donald Trump. I tried to find times that he said, "I am a blank," or I'm really a blank. And there are a lot of examples of this because we're, in theory, creating Donald Trump from scratch. I want a word with the most creative potential. I'm going to choose one he actually has said, which is, "I am really a builder." Now, whether he is actually a builder or he is something else, we will discover over the course of our story. So that's it for this week. Next week, we'll be going to the next couple of sections, which have to do with their physical appearance, how they are in a room, and the really interesting and dark concept of shame. Thanks for watching. Until next time.